topic is. So I'm going to turn it immediately over to you, and you
All
can
right.
take it away.
Awesome. I'm super excited that there are people who've seen me before and gave me cool points. And I'm sad that we're not in person, but I'm glad that we're doing this virtually. It was sad to not be able to do it last year. So I am going to be talking about how a bill becomes a law. And I chose the Brady Bill as my example because it really shows the interplay of the three branches of government. So before I launch into my presentation, I actually want to do some poll questions. So I'm going to ask Therese to bring up the first question. And I believe that polls are anonymous. So that's why I didn't just put it in the chat. I didn't want you to have to put, I didn't want you to have to put this in the chat. I wanted you to be able to just anonymously tell me if you own a gun.
It is anonymous. I can confirm that.
Okay. So I will tell you that I do own a gun. My husband is a police detective, but even before he was law enforcement, we had guns in our house. We do not have children, and my dog doesn't have thumbs, so we don't have any child safety measures in place. Okay. All right. So about 30% own a gun, about 70% do not. Let's go ahead and go to the second question in the poll.
Alrighty.
And this is something I'm curious about. Does your school have active shooter drills? I am not often in the classroom, particularly during the pandemic. I haven't been able to do any outreach. But fall of 2019, I was at Little Rock Central High School, which you may know we're going to talk about on Thursday, something that happened there in 1957. But we had a combination in the middle of, like, I was presenting on how, a lot of schools have active shooter drills. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the third and final poll. So at Little Rock Central High, it was a active shooter drill, followed by a tornado drill, followed by a fire drill, all in one. And we lost a third of that class period. Okay, so we are looking pretty evenly divided about whether or not we think increased gun control would prevent school shootings. Yes, Diane, they should never do them all at once. I think they had forgotten to do them for the quarter or something, and they just threw them all in one day. It was a mess. And then the class period changed. It was so much instructional time. Wow. That could not be, it could be 50-50, but that's pretty darn evenly split with ideas about gun control. Okay, so now that we've had that discussion and we've gotten that out of the way, I'm not going to talk about gun control. That's not what this session is about. This session is about the arduous journey of the Brady Bill. Now, I knew that I was going after the simulation, and I knew that I was going, we're going to do something really cool on Thursday. And so I was trying to think of what I could do with the Brady Bill to really keep it interesting. And I thought about several different games, right? Because the journey of the Brady Bill is kind of like Chutes and Ladders, right? That little kids game we used to play. Everybody, Chutes and Ladders. Give me a thumbs up. All right. And then I was like, oh no, there are 3 presidents who deal with the Brady Bill. It could be like a dating game. And then, like, who would be the host? Where does the NRA fit? And then I got worried, actually, that that y'all were going to think that I was not taking the Brady Bill seriously. And so that's when I decided not to do a game. But I did do this. And forgive me, because once I started thinking about this, I couldn't stop. The Brady Bunch. Okay, so then I was like making up a song, and then my whole train of thought got derailed. So just imagine your own squares turning around with James Brady and the presidents and the Congress and the courts. And if you're so inclined, feel free to like make up your own lyrics. I did not get very far with that process before I had to stop and really refocus on my presentation. Okay, so we all know the basics of how a bill becomes a law. I'm not going to teach you that today. You know this, right? So here's my little roadmap. It's an idea, it's a bill, it gets a number, it goes to committee, the committee recommends it, the Rules Committee says okay, gets voted on, goes to the other chamber, so the Senate or the House. And then, so sometimes you're driving on the road backwards, but once everybody votes on it, the president can sign or veto a bill, and then it becomes law. So the Brady Bill took so long that it actually takes up 2 entire slides just to hit the highlights of the journey of the Brady Bill. I'm not going to read this to you. Mark will you're going to share everything, right, Mark? I'm going to share this presentation with you, and then you share it with them, and then they can do what they want with it. Exactly. Okay, but we are beginning, and this is where we connect to the simulation that we just came from, and everyone in my group, immediately knew that, made that connection to Reagan and the assassination attempt. So it's really interesting though. So Reagan is shot, right? James Brady is shot, Secret Service agent, DC police officer. And 4 years later, Reagan actually signs something that makes it, that protects firearms owners, right? It's literally called the Firearms Owners Protection Act. And it has to do with liability and things. So in February of '87, Democratic representative, Democratic senator, both from Ohio, introduced the Brady Bill to the 100th Congress, and it goes nowhere. So Vice President Bush, he's campaigning, right? So President's second term, President Reagan's second term is ending. Vice President Bush successfully runs against Michael Dukakis, and he is full on pro-gun candidate, and the NRA endorses him. So the Brady Bill gets reintroduced, and then Bush is like, I'm not going to sign the Brady Bill if you send it to me separately, but if you put it in the crime bill, I'll probably sign the crime bill. And then it gets really weird. And then Bush bans import of foreign-made assault weapons. And the text here is assault rifles, and that's going to come up later. And word to the wise, don't ever ask your spouse if they're in law enforcement about the Brady Bill, particularly if they work with the ATF, because they'll start telling you that there's no clear, concise metric for what is or what is not an assault rifle or an assault handgun or an assault weapon. Okay, so here's where it gets weird. Reagan publishes an op-ed in the New York Times supporting the Brady Bill. And I'm about to show you a video where Reagan goes to visit Bush, so former President Reagan, current President Bush, and they have a press conference. So the problem is the House continues to pass the Brady Bill, Senate vote prevented by filibuster. And at this point, as we've discussed, it's been attached to a crime bill. And now people launch a campaign. So people who support increased gun control launch a campaign and say, we need to free the Brady Bill, make it separate. Governor Clinton, so President Clinton is governor of Arkansas at the time. He is the Democratic candidate. He says, let's do this. Let's free the Brady Bill. Let's make it happen. In November 1992, President Clinton, or Governor Clinton at the time, defeats President Bush. So I'm going to show you this video. I did a clip of this. I pulled it from C-SPAN. You guys, I'm sure already know this, but you can go on C-SPAN and get stuff and clip it to be what you want it to be, so you don't have all the extraneous stuff. Because I don't remember how long this clip is, but I can tell you what I clipped is 2 minutes. Are y'all hearing sound?
We're going to be discussing that. I'm very interested in the President's view on it.
President Reagan is wrong? Do you think President Reagan is wrong?
You misunderstood me. I just said I want to talk to him and get his views on this.
President Reagan, do you think President Bush should now support the Brady Bill?
Oh, I don't know why it quit playing. Hang on. It was doing this to me before. I'm on, like I said, I'm on somebody else's computer.
What he should or shouldn't do. I happen to believe in the Brady Bill because we have that same thing in California right now.
Why did you change your mind after 10 years?
I didn't. I was against a lot of the ridiculous things that were proposed about with regard to government control. And I've heard this. I am supposed to have said that I was opposed to that type of thing. No, because as I say, a number of states, including my own state, have.
Mr. President, have you linked the Brady Bill to the crime package you sent out to Capitol Hill? President Bush.
When you say Mr. President, you know who I think you're talking about here. Come on, no respect.
President Bush, have you linked it to?
I'm going to go discuss all this and other weighty subjects with President Reagan right now.
President Reagan, don't you think by supporting the Brady Bill today that you in fact put pressure on President Bush to support it as well?
I don't put pressure on him.
President Bush, Brady Bill.
Let me tell what president you're talking to.
President Bush, is the Brady Bill something you could consider?
I'm going to go discuss all this with President Reagan right now. Thanks for your interest in this subject, though. There seems to be a great deal more now than there was 30 minutes ago.
Okay, so President Bush says there seems to be a lot more interest than there was 30 minutes ago. So right before this meeting, President Reagan has made an address at George Washington University in which he references supporting the Brady Bill, right? So by the time he comes over to, hang out with his former vice president, now president, the press is all over this, right? And it's interesting because Reagan says, I was never against the Brady Bill, which was weird. And okay, let's go. Okay, so we pick up with President Clinton is sworn in as our 42nd president. In his first State of the Union address, he says, if you pass it, I will sign it. Let's do this. So this time, at this point, the Brady Bill has already been introduced in 3 different sessions of Congress, 100, 101, 102. It's now the 103rd Congress. The same senator from Ohio is joined by Chuck Schumer as a representative, and they reintroduced the Brady Bill. And just there's been a sea change at this point, right? So much so that 99 representatives and 29 senators co-sponsor this bill with the people that have introduced it. So you think, okay, right? We've got this swell, we've got this momentum. House, once again, House passes the Brady Bill. Senate passes a revised version. They get back together, they agree on what the real bill is going to look like. Goes back to the House. The House is like, we're totally cool with what you've done. Goes to the Senate. Bob Dole, not having it. Okay, so there's a filibuster and they're not going to approve the conference report. There's so much information on this slide that I actually I doubled up on the little arrows. So the reason that I have Thanksgiving right there is here's what happens in the end. We've got a filibuster that we can't break, and Democrats have control of the Senate, and they're basically like, hey, if we don't decide this before Thanksgiving, instead of going home for the whole month of December, we're going to come back after Thanksgiving. And that is what it took to end the filibuster, was the threat of Congress having to come back to work after Thanksgiving is what ended the filibuster. So in late November of 1993, President Clinton signs the Brady Bill. The Bradys are there. When President Clinton runs for re-election, the Bradys appear at the Democratic National Convention to voice their support. Later, President Clinton presents James Brady with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But then things get interesting. And this is why I'm using the Brady Bill as my example to talk about how a bill becomes a law, because it is not a straight line. It's not that road. It's not these arrows. It's really more of a circle. We'll talk about that in just a second. I want to point out on this slide, everything that's in italics are things that videos that we have available that you can watch, you can share with your students. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute, but I want you to see this video of the Bradys at the Democratic National Convention. And again, I have clipped it. So we're just looking at about 2 minutes of this. And then I want to talk about how we remember things and how we often get it wrong.
Jim, we must have made a wrong turn. This isn't San Diego.
I told you, this is the Democrat convention.
Wonderful invitation. 15 years ago, Jim was White House press secretary. Our son Scott, who's up here, was just 2 years old. All our dreams had come true. But then one rainy afternoon in March, our dreams were shattered by an assassination attempt on President Reagan. President Reagan was shot, and so was Jim. We almost lost Jim that day, and we almost lost the president. But thanks to the heroism of the Secret Service and the determination of the physicians and staff at George Washington Hospital, Jim lived. And so did the president, thank God. Would never be quite the same. All it took was one gun, one bullet, and one man who should never have owned a gun.
when I knew that that clip existed, and I managed to convince myself that it was the 1992 convention, and that James Brady said, "Sarah, I think we took a wrong turn." Because I asked, I have a graduate assistant during the school year, and I said, "I need you to find this video." And he's like, they didn't speak at the 92 convention. And I'm like, "Yes, they did. I remember it. And James Brady says, "Sarah, I think we've taken a wrong turn." And I had absolutely convinced myself that that is how it happened. And he figured out that no, they didn't speak at 92, they spoke at 96. And when I pulled the clip, I'm like, oh, she's the one that makes the joke. So I'm throwing that out there to say, we remember things incorrectly. So when we talk about things that happened in the past, things that we experienced, it's important to kind of revisit some of that. Okay, so here's the circle I was talking about, right? So, so parts of the Brady Bill are struck down by the Supreme Court while President Clinton is still in office. So there are other things that President Clinton did where the courts later determined those things to be unconstitutional. But this is actually happening pretty quickly, considering, the Supreme Court they're not known for their speedy action. So I'm going to take you back. So we're talking about a bill that is signed in November of 1993. It actually goes into effect in 1994. Oral arguments are heard by the Supreme Court in December of 1996, and they strike down the portion of the Brady Bill that requires CLEO are the people who are in charge of law enforcement. So like a sheriff or a police chief. And basically what we're looking at is they hope to establish a system, an instantaneous system for a national instant background check system. But such a thing did not exist in 1993. So if you're old enough, like myself, think back to 1993, and yeah, we weren't there yet. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the technology that we have now. But it's interesting when we look at the part that they declared unconstitutional and the rationale for declaring it unconstitutional. So what happens is two CLEOs, the CLEOs, file two different lawsuits and they get combined, and that's how they go to the Supreme Court. And what they determined is that the federal government does not have the authority. The executive branch of the federal government does not have the authority to tell local law enforcement what they should be doing. So the reason that my GA was looking for the video that I just showed you is that he created, at my behest, he created a website that is all about the Brady Bill. It has not been published yet. There's still some work to be done. So you guys are actually the first, you're the first teachers to see it. You're actually the first kind of members of the public to see it. So I want to take you there. It has chapters, so it's organized by chapters. And so this chapter is exploring what the Supreme Court did, but you're really seeing the three branches of government and those checks and balances, and that the push-pull, the tension between these branches of government. So the first document that you see, and when you're on this website, you can click on them and then they get bigger and you can look at them. And you can see that we're pulling documents from the National Archives catalog. We're pulling documents from our own digital library. So from lots of different sources. Let's make that a little bit bigger. This is a memo from Ron Klain, who you might know. He's in the Biden administration now. He was just a kid when he worked for President Clinton. But this is a memo that he wrote to Janet Reno, to the Attorney General, basically saying, here's what's happening. Here's how we think we should respond. You know, if the Supreme Court rules in this way, you know, this is how we should respond. But what you also see, this is a brief to the court from senators who supported the Brady Bill, and they're defending its constitutionality. So we've got the executive branch, you've got the president, you've got the attorney general, you've got Congress, you've got the legislative branch. And then also on this page, you see the Supreme Court, and their decision basically is, we're going to throw out everything. Well, no, we're going to keep everything, but throw out the part of the Brady Bill that says that chief law enforcement officer, CLEOs, have to do this work. It's going to be voluntary. And so it ends up not being a Second Amendment right, but rather the 10th Amendment. So let me switch back to my presentation, and you can read a little bit more about it. It's a very much a split decision. So it's 5-4. And it's interesting to note that 2 of the 4 people, 2 of the 4 Supreme Court justices that vote against throwing the part out are Clinton appointees, right? So at this point in really President Clinton's not even 2 months into his presidency when he has the first vacancy that he fills with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then the following year, he's able to fill another vacancy with Breyer. But it really kind of shows you how things could have gone differently if he'd been able to appoint more people. And, you know, that's just so unpredictable. But yes, the federal government may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program, but that this provision was severable from the remainder of the act. Right, so basically they kept all of the Brady Bill except the part that said that the CLEOs had to run those background checks. Because the technology wasn't there. This was going, the people who filed the lawsuits, they used the 10th Amendment, but they also made the argument that that couldn't be added onto their workload, that they had enough stuff that they were doing. All right, so this is a super secret link to this Brady Bill. I feel like that is not the right URL. Let's see if it actually takes us where we want to go. Okay, Brady Bill becomes a law. It is the right URL. It just says bill twice, which, by the way, I want you all to notice that I'm wearing my I'm Just a Bill Schoolhouse Rock t-shirt. Okay, so this is what the website looks like. This is what the Brady Bill website looks like. And it's got all those cool sources that I was talking about, the chapters. So like you can go to this. I'm sorry, I'm using a computer with a trackpad, so I'm not very good at it. But this actually, this includes, so I mentioned the National Archives catalog, I mentioned our digital library, but like this report of progress from the Clinton-Gore administration, one of the things that we have is frozen websites. So the Clinton administration, I'm gonna say they were the first. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But they had an actual whitehouse.gov website. And so, so this is a frozen website from their 5th version of their website. And then the other thing that we have, now I pulled video from C-SPAN because we have official footage, official White House TV footage of President Clinton's address at the 1996 National Convention, but we don't have the other parts. So I didn't have access to the Brady. But we have a very robust YouTube channel, which is Clinton Library 42. And that's actually where I pulled, I'm gonna end with a video, but let me go back here for just a second. There we go. Yeah, so President Clinton awards James Brady the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He also renames the press briefing room in honor of James Brady. And I don't think I said this earlier, but one of the things that I learned that I thought was interesting is that James Brady, although he was unable to perform the functions, James Brady is Reagan's press secretary for the rest of his time in office. Right, so somebody else is doing the job, but the title never leaves Brady, which I think is interesting. Okay, so let me go back here. Go forward. Okay, so why don't we watch that video for just a second? And again, it's relatively short. I'm going to take you there. And then I'm going to not buy premium. And I'm going to fast forward to minute marker 16.
Down by a would-be assassin's bullet after less than 3 months on the job. He fought back, pulled through, and went on to assume a new public role as a courageous, stubborn, and effective advocate against gun violence. Families and communities all across America are safer today because of James Brady's refusal to give up or give in. With an indomitable spirit and an unflagging thumbs-up optimism, James Brady has demonstrated the capacity to triumph over personal hardship and achieve his cherished goals.
Okay, so that's your brief but tedious overview of the Brady Bill. How 12 years, 3 presidents, 4 Congresses, and 1 Supreme Court, how those branches all interacted, and this legislation got passed and then part of it got tossed. And one of the things, let me go back to that. I think this is a particularly interesting example of a Supreme Court decision because it really points out that the Supreme Court is not only looking at whether a law itself is constitutional, but also looking at whether or not the way the law is enforced is constitutional. So that's the judicial branch checking the executive branch, or checking the legislative branch, but also checking the executive branch. So it's a real interesting tension between the branches. And I think it's a really good example. So ClintonLibrary.gov is our website. We've got a bunch of stuff on there that I hope you guys will find interesting and useful. We offer teacher workshops. We have lesson plans. We have activities. Last November, we added something called the Powers of the Presidency portal. And I define the powers of the presidency that come directly from the Constitution as the 4 C's. So Chief Executive, Commander-in-Chief, Chief Diplomat, and Ceremonial Head of State. And so what you'll find in the Powers of the Presidency portal is concrete examples. So it has the text from the Constitution, and then it kind of shows you, okay, this is what the Constitution says, but then this is what that looks like, the presidency in action. And that's primary source materials pulled from a variety of sources, records of the Clinton Library. I mentioned our digital library. The documents that we have that have been reviewed, released, and digitized are available through the Clinton Digital Library. And it's a great resource, but at times it can be like drinking from a fire hose. So if you put in, a keyword search, you might get, 11,000 returns on that. And so I've included here some links that will take you to some ways to kind of narrow your search. We have the schedules for the president and the first lady. Topical research guides are going to be things like, there's one about, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately because they're in the news, but about democracy in Haiti. That was an issue during the Clinton administration. And so there's a topical research guide. So basically it has a couple of paragraphs, 2 or 3 paragraphs that kind of tell you what the situation was. And then it lists with links all of the related records that we have open. Digital library exhibits are like that, but they go a little more in depth. So a digital library exhibit is going to be about a specific topic. It's going to have an introduction, a conclusion, and chapters in between. So things like President Clinton's public diplomacy in Northern Ireland. I think the last time that I spoke at one of these Truman, the last time we were in person in Missouri, I talked about President Clinton in Northern Ireland and talked about the digital library exhibit related to that. They've added some things to our digital library recently, including you can look at the president's travel schedule. You can look at meetings and calls that he had with foreign leaders and memcons and telcons. I did not realize this, but when the president is on the phone, there are like 5 or 6 people in the room taking notes about what's being said, and those become telcons, so that all the information gets synthesized into one document, basically a record of what was said in the conversation. So those are really interesting, really interesting. And I'm pretty sure this is my last slide. There we go. That's me. This is my last slide. And I don't know why I put my phone number on there, because I have only been in the office 4 or 5 times this year. So you really don't ever want to try to call me. Email me. I would love to hear from all of you. Stephen Lewis is attending from Arkansas, and he has brought students to the Clinton Library. So he can provide a testimonial if you need one about the cool things that we do there. Right now, we're not doing anything at the library. We are open to the public, limited days, limited hours, limited number of visitors. So we don't know when our on-site programs will return, but we are offering a variety of virtual programs. And I'm glad to say that everything we do is free. So if you want a virtual program, just let me know. All right, are there questions, thoughts, comments? snide remarks, I should look in the chat and see what you guys are saying about me. I'll stop sharing. All right, great case for the 10th Amendment. Oh, 27th took 202 years. Yes, yes. NRA went bankrupt. I don't know. Wait, I just saw somebody say San Diego was 92, not according to C-SPAN.
The Republican National Convention was in San Diego in 1992.
Okay.
So that's where she got mixed up, and she said she made a turn to San Diego.
Right. She says this is not San Diego.
That's right.
Right.
Because
right.
San Diego is where they went in 92.
Yes.
When he was, he was a Republican.
Yes, yes, yes.
At the Democratic thing. Anyway,
yes.
The only reason I know that is my boss became unemployed and he worked and set up the Republican thing there. And he got a job at the lodge at Torrey Pines as their HR guy. Because the woman he was helping, they owned Torrey Pines.
Okay. And Beth is showing me that the judge has dismissed the NRA bankruptcy case, heightening risk of dissolution of the group. All right. Questions. Got the link in the chat. Lots of thank yous. Okay. Try to get a job as a limo driver. But it is funny how we remember things that happened when we were alive. And I'm gonna date myself and say I was in 6th grade when President Reagan was shot. And 6th graders can be immature. And several people that I went to school with were very excited that the president was shot because of that whole weird, I'm trying to remember, it's something about presidents elected in certain years, something, it's the whole Lincoln thing. Yes, some of y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So they were like super excited that it was good, that was true. The zero factor, thank you. Yes, but we watched the footage on CNN, right? On one of those giant TVs that you rolled in on a cart. They were like super heavy cart thing. Yeah. It's strange to think about. Okay, went back to William Henry Harrison. So I guess that's because Reagan was elected in 1980.
Yeah, he's the one who broke the zero factor.
Okay.
Everybody else electing in a year ending in 0 died in office.
Okay. Yeah, just I don't want to play to gender stereotypes, but I will tell you, all the boys in 6th grade were like, Reagan's gonna die. Yeah, awkward, immature. Okay, it is 2:51. And you guys have had a full day, right? This is day 2. I'm going to see you again first thing in the morning on Thursday. So if you have questions that you come up with between now and then, we probably won't have any more time to answer them, but I can tell you can ask me then. You also know my email, even if you don't think you do, because all of our emails are exactly the same. First name, dot, last name, @nara.gov or nora.cup, according to the closed captioning.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. As Kathleen said, she will be back with us later in the week.
We're going to have some fun.
Yes, as will Jeff, who you heard from first thing this morning. He's going to be presenting later in the week as well. So if you've got any final questions, I can stick around online here for a few more minutes, but if not, we will see you at 10 o'clock